Good evening. Good evening. How's everybody doing tonight? We'll give everybody a few minutes to come into the room and get going. And while we're waiting for people to join in, if you could just put in the chat where you're coming in from and where your student's going to college, that would be awesome. And Rynda, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
All right. So I'm Rynda Wilk, one of the planners here at College Aid Pro. I have two students in college myself, so I understand what you guys are going through right now. And yeah, I got into this field because I have a background in financial planning and then financial coaching and working with a lot of young adults who had been to college and came out with a lot of debt. So I really am interested in helping families pay for college in the best way possible. So hopefully they don't end up in a difficult financial situation in the future.
Yeah, and I'm Chuck Bates. I'm a financial advisor in Houston. I've been working with College Aid Pro for going on like 5 years now. Same as Renda. I have a daughter who's going to be a senior this year. We're just finishing up her Common App, and we're not far behind all you in terms of borrowing and paying for college. So I can empathize and understand what you're going through. And we're excited to be here and present tonight. And Rynda and I are going to kind of split this up, and one of us will be talking, and the other will try and answer questions in the Q&A. So if you do have questions, make sure they go in the Q&A and not the chat, and we'll try and address those as we go. And right now, we'll just kind of kick it off and let you know that here at College Aid Pro, our mission is to make sure we end the student debt crisis. We just want to make sure we empower families to shop smarter for college. And that's what tonight's all about, right? We're going to talk a lot about loans, borrowing, how you can make the best decisions for your unique family situation as you get close to paying that first semester bill. You've already met Rynda and I, so I guess we'll just jump into it. Rynda, you mind if I start and you can answer questions?
Go right ahead.
Awesome, awesome. All right, so let's talk about the timeline a little bit. You're probably right in the middle of this, right? Like most colleges are going to issue the fall semester bills around mid-July, and typically are due mid-August or maybe as late as September. So you've probably, if you've got a student off in college, you've already got your first bill. Most of the colleges, issue the spring semesters in mid-November, and they're typically due mid-December, which is going to be really important when we start talking about 529 plans, because you always want to match those expenses to the calendar year you're actually paying. So keep that in mind as we get through the presentation a little bit. Most loan applications can be completed and issued in 1 to 3 days. It's really a quick timeline. It goes pretty fast. So that's the good news. If you're to a point where you're worried about how you're going to pay, after today, if you decide you're going to apply for some loans, it's very likely that you could have them funded and ready to go to make your payment, this year. And generally, we advise having the loans in place by mid-July, but we're a little bit past that now. And then in terms of payments, a lot of schools will offer payment plans, and generally those first payments on the payment plans can start as early as June. All right. So what's the most important thing we like to think about? And we like to say cash flow is king. For every $100 a month you can save and put towards college, that's $5,000 less a year your family may need to borrow. $5,000 less over 4 years your family may need to borrow. And if you think about that in terms of monthly payments, right, that's going to be $50 a month on a 10-year loan repayment, right? So it makes an impact. If you're making payments every month for 10 years, that $50 could be a nice steak dinner somewhere. And what's the most important thing to do when you're starting this process? It's probably time to hit the reset button and kind of clean out the junk drawer, if you will. Use starting college as an opportunity to maximize efficiency, in your entire financial life. So people always ask, what do you think? What do you mean by that? And it means, going through your finances with a fine-tooth comb. So what I would say to start with are activities. So I don't know about you guys, but I've got two kids, a boy and a girl. My daughter's been in competitive dance. She's been a varsity golfer. My son plays travel rugby. Um, and now my daughter's raising a steer for FFA. So when she graduates, all those fees for dance and for all the 150-pound bags of feed I buy for the steer are all going away. And that's money in theory I could reprioritize towards paying for college. So it's always good. And then there's just the things like subscriptions, right? Like, do you have an extra Hulu subscription and you haven't turned on Hulu in, 6 months? Or do you have a gym membership and you haven't gone in 2 years, right? Those are things you can kind of pull out, cancel, and redirect that money to college. And if you're using a payment plan, it can make a big deal. And then last is maybe a little more complex, but it's things we talk about here in Texas all the time, right? We have the ability to switch our utility provider all the time, and the rates change based on the time of year. So, maybe you can find a utility provider that your electric bill will be less, or maybe you can switch from Verizon to T-Mobile and save yourself $100 a month on 4 phones. Those are all things we call cleaning out your junk drawer. Um, Brenda, anything else you want to throw in on that?
Well, I love to use this example because it's a real life example. My son, when he went to college, we actually compared our grocery bill from before he left till and after he left, and no joke, it was $400 or $500 a month less. So if you got a 6'5" boy going off to college, you might have that experience too. And hey, that's a lot more money you can put towards college if you're really proactive about it.
Yeah, it can make a big difference. And Rynda, can you see the Q&A section? Have any questions come in? Are they coming
No
in?
questions have come in, but hey, we do have kind of a smaller group, so it's a great opportunity for you guys to get your questions answered. If you want to post some things in the Q&A, we'll do our best to answer those.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, we'll keep this rolling. We're going kind of fast, but again, you'll have the opportunity to ask plenty of questions, so feel free. All right. So next, let's talk about, how can we reduce the amount we borrow? And one of the best ways is signing up for a payment plan through the university. Most schools utilize third parties, but it's easy to sign up. A good thing to know is it's almost always done through the school portal. So your student will have to use their user ID and credentials to log in. And if you haven't done this already, every parent should work with their student to be set up as an authorized party on their school's portal. That way you'll at least know when the bills are coming, how much they are, and have some insight into the timing of those things. It'll be very helpful. So every school's portal will have instructions on how to set you up as an authorized party. And then once you're set up as the authorized party, you'll be able to set up the payment plan. Typically, they're about 10-month repayment plans. Most of them, like we said earlier, start in the spring, June-ish. And they really do vary school by school. So both the enrollment fee, most of the ones I've seen here in the last year that I've helped families with were about $40 to $50. I think they can be as high as 75 or 100, but it depends on the school. And, it will also depend on the number of payments they allow you to make. But each school is unique. They do have deadlines sometime, and if you've missed that, I've had some be more flexible. You can call the financial aid department and they'll help you. And I've had others say, sorry, you missed the deadline. You got to wait till the next window opens. So anyway, and it doesn't always have to be for the entire amount of your tuition or your cost of attendance, right? You can make payments on just what you can afford in those windows. So this is, again, going back to, cash flow is king. It's a great way to make payments on a regular basis to reduce the amount of your borrowing. Okay. So this is where people really start to have the most specific questions, technical questions. They come in a lot. It's when should we use specific resources? So generally people have, student savings and investments, college saving plans. So think 529 or prepaid tuition, and then other college savings and gifts from grandparents. So before we go into the order, I think the two most important things to capture on this slide are know in advance what you're really going to need to borrow, um, right? Because you don't want to run into a situation where you're into the junior or senior year and you find out you need to borrow and now you've missed out on some of the lower cost opportunities. So knowing what you need to borrow in advance is going to be helpful. And, if you've got a rich aunt or a grandparent that's offered to help, it might be time to have that difficult conversation before you get into school and get the bills to know exactly what they're really going to help with, right? I helped a family last year where they told me grandparents were going to pay 50% of the college bill. And when it came down to it, the grandparents chipped in $5,000 at a $90,000 school. So, what they say and what they do can sometimes differ. So make sure you're prepared for that. And then also prepare for the unexpected, right? Like a job loss or, I had a family where the primary breadwinner passed away unexpectedly. So some of these things all go hand in hand with this plan. So we want you to plan for 4 years. Uh, we want to make sure that you know what your amount is. So if you have to borrow through the federal direct student loans that are use it or lose it, you can take them all 4 years. And then, you know, uh, after that, it becomes every family situation is unique. And working as a financial advisor, I like to say financial planning is 80% personal and 20% finance, right? So what's the most unique and need for your family is going to outweigh more of the financial decisions in most cases. All right. Oh, there we go. So when you're funding with a 529, um, the couple things to think of, they have to be qualified higher education expenses. So typically anything that rolls into the cost of attendance, with the exception of travel. So think tuition, think books, think room and board. Those are the primary ones that you can pay with a 529. You want to make sure if you're living off campus that you have a real good idea of what the on-campus room and board bill is. That's going to be the maximum you can pay. So if it costs $10,000 to live on campus, but your off-campus apartment is 13,000, you're not going to be able to pay 13,000 with your 529, only 10 of that. Um, in terms of how you get the money, most 529 plans give you some options. Some will give you the ability to pay the school directly. Some will give you the ability to pay the owner of the account and let them send it off to the school. Some will give you the opportunity to pay the beneficiary of the account, let them send it off to school. So you just need to figure out what works best for you. In general, my experience has been paying the school seems to work best. And have the least amount of hiccups and challenges. You're going to want to make sure you're comfortable with the paper trail that goes into this. There's a couple pieces of documentation that are going to be really relevant for you. The first is a 1099-Q. That's going to come from the 529 plan itself, and it's going to tell you what you've taken out in a given year. And then the other one is a 1098-T, which comes from the college, and the T stands for tuition. So it's going to be a breakdown of the expenses you paid the university. And you're going to want to make sure that, again, this is very important, that the year you take the money from the 529 pays an expense for that year. So the biggest time it comes into question is around Christmas and the holidays. A lot of time parents may take the distribution in December with the expectation of paying a tuition bill in January. And you really want to avoid that. That can create a lot of problems. You should wait till January 1st, take the distribution, and pay your January bill at that time. All right. A couple other things. 529s get some favorable tax treatment. So if you're using money from a 529, you can't use those same funds to claim the American Opportunity Tax Credit. We're going to talk about that, I think, on the next slide. So you can't double dip there. And again, just reinforce, know your room and board expense if you plan to live off campus. Rynda, anything you'd throw in there? Looks like there she goes.
Oh, did I
You're
take
off
the
mute now.
mouse
You're
back?
good.
I was having trouble finding um my cursor.
Mhm.
No, I mean you did a great job with that. Yeah, those are all good tips for using your 529 plan
Awesome.
smartly.
All right. All right, so keeping this moving, American Opportunity Tax Credit. So this is direct credit, so it's a dollar for dollar up to $2,500 uh, credit off your taxes, and up to 1,000 of that is refundable. So depending on your financial situation and your tax burden, it could lead to even getting $1,000 back if you owed no other tax. So that's good. Um, it's 2,500 per child. If you have twins, it can be 5,000 per child. It does have a phase out for income based on AGI, so that is line 11 on your 1040 tax return. Up to 160,000 as a family income, you get the full amount, and then it starts to shrink between 160 and 180,000. I kind of mentioned this before. You cannot pay the entire college bill from funds from a 529. You have to pay at least $4,000, excuse me, of your bill with non 529 dollars. That's just so you're not double dipping on the tax benefits from the 529 and the American Opportunity Tax Credit. Generally, students must be a dependent for the parents to claim the credit. There may be some unique situations where your student, if they meet a means test or are supplying 50% of their own support, they might be considered tax independent and might be able to claim that credit on their own. So that's something you could look into. You'd want to obviously talk to your financial advisor or your CPA. You want to make sure you're avoiding the kiddie tax, which would be, having your student taxed at your rate. But if they are supplying 50% of their own support, they might be eligible for this. So
All right, Chuck, I'm going to jump in. And we did get a question in the Q&A
awesome.
regarding 529 plans. So the question is, are there any income restrictions or limits to contributing to a 529? So there are no income restrictions. There could be some state-specific aggregate contribution limits. Some states will limit the total amount you can contribute to a 529. And so that's going to be state by state, and you'll just want to check with the 529 plan you're working with. But there is a consideration you should think about in terms of your annual gift to the 529, because this is basically considered a gift to your child. And so if you go over the annual gift tax exclusion limit, it just means that the amount of the overage would count towards your lifetime gift tax exclusion limit. And so right now that annual amount is $19,000. If you're married, you and your spouse can each contribute 19,000 to each of your children. So you can really kind of double that if it's a marriage situation,
Yeah,
without having to worry about filing any extra tax forms if you've gone over that limit.
those are great points. And since we kind of smaller group and have more time, there are two other things I'd add. One, if your financial situation allows for it, you can actually front load 5 years of a gift at one time. You only want to do that basically if you can do the entire 5 year maximum. Otherwise, it there makes things a little trickier. But if you have the money to do that, and that gives you, potentially 18 years for it to grow, might be significantly better. And on top of that, so Rynda mentioned there might be aggregate limits from the state, but they're usually pretty high. I would say usually between 300 and 500,000 for most states. So you can give quite a bit. And there's a relatively new rule that if a student or a beneficiary doesn't use all their money from their 529 plan, it can be converted to a Roth IRA for the beneficiary. And there's still some rules around that. Basically, I think it's 7,000 a year and 30,000 total. But if you did that, you could be turning your student into a millionaire by the time they're 35, just by getting them started that way. So a couple extra tidbits on the 529. Awesome. All right. I think I covered the American Opportunity Tax Credit pretty well. Um, So general borrowing, again, personal finance is 80% personal, 20% finance. Um, we do not want you borrowing based on what your neighbor did or your cousin did or what Dave Ramsey says on the radio. We want you borrowing uniquely on your family's criteria, right? So, it may mean you're only willing to borrow 1 year. It may mean, you want a certain loan payback period. There's lots of things that go into it, but please, please, please make sure it fits your family situation and it's not dictated by some other party that's not tied to you. And then know and understand how much to borrow and who's going to be paying it off, right? Is it going to be the student? Is it going to be the parent? Is it going to be both? And how much are you guys agreeing on borrowing upfront? So, those are the things that are really going to make a difference for your family going into the situation. All right. So this is where the good stuff starts. So CAP's affordability profile. Hopefully everybody here has a MyCap profile and is logged into the software. Hopefully you used it to find the best fit school. You used it to successfully appeal and get a lower bill. And now you're to the final step of borrowing and paying. So I'm going to pause here and share my screen back to the software. Give me just a second. Software. All right. Share. All right. And Rynda, can you see that all right?
It said, oh, now I can.
Is it the College Aid Pro?
Yes, it is.
Awesome. All right. So the most important thing is right over here on the right-hand side, you can see your list of schools and you'll see caution, great, good, great, ideal, caution, good, great. So all of these are telling you, okay, hey, based on the information you entered in your profile up here and what we expect your net cost to be, this is your borrowing situation. And again, so no loans is ideal, right? Anybody who can get through 4 years with no loans, that's amazing. A great situation is loans under the 27,000 federal direct student loan limit. So that would be 5,500 your freshman year, 6,500 your sophomore year, and then 7,500 your junior and senior year. That's considered great, right? Like that's going to be about a 250, 270, maximum $300 payment over 10 years. Almost every major and every career can almost afford that coming out of college. Good would be when your loan total over 4 years is below your expected first year salary. So why don't we go ahead and go in here and look at Kansas State real quick. That says good. And if we come over here to the affordability, we can see that this major was geology and earth science, and the expected first year salary is about 50,000. So this is saying over 4 years, you can borrow about 50,000 and still be in good shape. But if you borrow more than that, it would move from good to caution. So that's a great tool. You can, like I said, always click into any school and click on the affordability. And it's a good way to see kind of the return on investment of the various schools, right? So at K-State, we know the first year salary is 50,000, but let's see what it is at Auburn by chance. 56,000, right? So is a $5,000 difference worth paying $20,000 more a year or 80,000 more over 4 years for college? Maybe, maybe not. Everything's unique and relative to your family. All right. Anything else I should show from the software, you think, Rynda? Or does that cover kind of the main points for the borrowing?
I think you demonstrated that very well. If
All right.
anybody has like anything specific they want to see on MyCap while we're doing the presentation, go ahead and let us know in the Q&A.
Now would be a great time. We're happy to pause for a second and show that since there's only 4 of you guys. You get special attention this evening. Oh, okay. If my student received a small outside scholarship, will the university lessen the institutional aid grant? If so, is the scholarship credited towards the tuition first? So generally, that's going to be on a school by school basis. Some will reduce it immediately. Some will give you a certain amount of outside scholarships. Like I know here in Houston where I live, Rice University will not do anything with the first $2,500 of outside scholarships. Um, so yeah, so then the scholarship will go to tuition, and then in theory, if the school were to reduce it, they would do so after that. So does you feel like that answers the entire question, Rynda?
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, I'll keep an eye on the Q&A and I'll bring the presentation back up. Give me 1 second. Where
On
did
that
my
point that Chuck was just making, while he's bringing the presentation up, just if you're thinking about using private scholarships as a big part of how you're going to pay the bill for college, just make sure you check with your school to see what their policy is on how private scholarships might affect any kind of aid that you've been offered.
Well, we love the questions. Keep them coming. All right. And then, so how much is safe for a student to borrow, right? This is basically a question of return on investment. And make sure, Rynda, can I get a thumbs up? Are you seeing the slide? Perfect. Awesome. Um, this is basically a question on return on investment of your school. You know, how much is too much? What's your ability to repay, right? So if you are going to be a teacher, um, you know, the starting salary for most teachers is probably pretty uniform across the country, somewhere in the 45 to $60,000 range. You know, if you're going to borrow $88,000, it's going to be a lot harder to pay back on the salary of a teacher than it would be on a computer science manager. So make sure you understand what you're studying, what the potential outcomes are for that. You know, teachers are angels, and we need more of them. So if you want to be a teacher, that's great, but just make sure you understand that when you're borrowing. All right, I see another question on the software. My question is more related to the software. I just signed up for 2 licenses to see how it works. Is there a difference on the features with the MyCap Premium access? Um, so once you're a paid subscriber of the software, you should have access to everything. You know, in terms of, let me share my screen. Sorry, I'm gonna stop that share and share my cap. Once you're a paid subscriber, you should have access to all the functionality. You know, the most important thing is going to be able to complete your profile info. So make sure you go in and answer, you know, the basic information, the student information, the parent information, and the My College budget. All that has to be complete for you to have the functionality that's within here. By being a premium member, you get access to the webinars like you're on today with Rynda and I. There's a lot of them that will come up, and you know, different topics. So it could be your school list, it could be how to pay, it could be how to appeal. All those things are extra with the premium access. All right.
And someone else is just asking if you'll click through the tabs, I believe,
Oh,
on
sure.
the
All
cap.
right. So let's look at Auburn. All right, so admissions, this is going to be important. It's going to tell you the number of students, the average GPA of past incoming classes, the middle 50% of test scores. So if your highest SAT verbal or English score is above 680, or your highest math SAT is above 690, that means you're in the top 25% of historically incoming freshmen. Same with ACT. It will tell you if they take the Common App. Excuse me. So financial, this is going to tell you the breakdown for room and board, cost of attendance, books and supplies, travel, stuff like that. It's going to project it out based on inflation for 4 years, depending on what year you're starting. Merit
And
scholarships.
also, sorry, important one under financial is it tells you where it says SAI basis on the left, it's going to tell you whether they're using the FAFSA to calculate your aid, or if it says institutional, that means they're using the CSS profile to calculate aid.
Yeah, that's a great addition. Thanks, Rynda. And then you'll see there, total need met is 59% and need met with grants is 82. So that goes into the formula. That's another topic for not for tonight, but it will help you understand what your cost is. And then it tells you almost 30% of the kids going to school at Auburn get some kind of merit aid, and the average merit award is about $9,000. So uh, from there, you can click on the merit scholarships and see all the different ones they offer. Um, here's the Spirit of Auburn founders, and it's basically saying if you've got a 3.5 GPA or a 1360 SAT, you're probably going to be eligible for it. So it'll tell you all the things available there. Affordability, we kind of already went through, and it's relative to your major. Award letters and appeal and how to pay will all come in later in the process. If you get a financial aid award letter and upload it, it will help tell you if you should appeal or if your offer was fair. And then how to pay would be at the end. It would take your budget into account, your scholarships, and figure out, hey, what's my borrowing situation? How much might I need to borrow? So hopefully that was helpful. And we'll keep this show rolling. And let me bring up the PowerPoint. And with that, I believe I'm going to hand it off to Rynda.
All right, so let's talk about loans. So you've already decided, hey, I'm gonna have to borrow some money. Where am I gonna get it from? Well, that's what we're gonna discuss. We're gonna talk about both loans and then also some alternative places that you might go to get funds.
Sorry, a little slow.
No worries. Um, First loan that you want to think about, and probably even if you don't need to borrow, it's not a bad idea to look at taking out the federal direct student loan. And the next screen is going to talk about why that is. But the important thing to know is it is a use it or lose it loan per year. So if you know you're going to need to borrow $20,000 over the course of 4 years, don't wait until the last year to borrow it, because if you start borrowing at year one, you can borrow all 20,000 through the federal direct student loan program. If you wait till senior year, you can see that you can only borrow up to $7,500 for that year. So you would then have to also go get another type of loan. The federal direct loan is, the most flexible, the best one to start with. So you can see it's also kind of graduated. So your first year you can take a total of 5,500, and that's split between fall and spring semester. 6,500 second year, and then 7,500 each of the third and fourth year. And the tiers we show here, this is just telling you how it could be divided up. If your SAI is low enough, you may get offered a portion of it as a subsidized loan, which means that it will not accrue interest while you're in school. If you only have, or if you have unsubsidized loans, those do start to accrue interest while you're in school.
And before
And
we go on, the one thing I always want to add on here, and I always forget. So we're going to talk about Parent Plus loans in a little bit. But if for any reason a parent is not approved for a Parent Plus loan, and technically has to be both parents, but if that's the case, then it does allow for $4,000 more a year for freshman and sophomore years for the student, and then $5,000 a year for junior and senior year. So it would be an additional, what's that, 18,000 over 4 years of loans and solely in the student's name though. So keep that in mind. But if for some reason a parent's credit score isn't good, it does open it up for the possibility for the student to get a little more.
Yep, and the interest rate is a flat rate. It's 6.39% for this school year. It changes every year on July 1st. So,
All right, another question popped in, so why don't we try and answer this? Uh, if my first year college student is going to use the federal direct loan, but only the 3,500 subsidized, is it correct that there won't be any accrued interest until after graduation? Also, can parents prepay or just the monthly interest if we end up taking the unsubsidized loan too? You want to take that, Rynda, or you want me
sure
to?
thing. That's correct. So subsidized loans do not accrue interest until after graduation. And Absolutely. If you take a loan, you can start paying on it at any time. There are no prepayment penalties. So a lot of people do start paying on their student loans while they're still in school.
Yep. And if you do that, it's only going to help your student's credit score.
Yep.
All right. Awesome.
All right. I think we can go to the next slide. So why do we tell everyone they should take out a federal student loan? Here we have the answer to that. And Chuck just alluded to it. Most of these kids going off to college don't have any kind of credit history. Taking out a student loan is an easy way for them to start building a credit history. So even if you just take it out and immediately repay it, it's still helpful to them from a credit history standpoint. Um, that we just talked about the second point as well. You can start paying it off right away. There is a 1% origination fee, or it's a little over 1% origination fee, but that's pretty low. So it is a easy, accessible loan to have, and it's there, some flexibility in the payoff as well if the student is going to pay it over time after they graduate. So that's very helpful for a young adult starting out in their career. Um, and taking out the student loan all 4 years can also help you in an appeal situation. So it shows the school that you are taking advantage of all the aid because they consider this aid, even though you have to pay it back. You're taking advantage of all the aid that they're making available to you. So let's say junior year, you have a change in circumstances and your financial situation is suddenly different. And you want to go appeal for financial aid. Maybe you haven't been getting need-based aid up to that point. Being able to show that you had been taking the federal student loans up to that point is in your favor when you're going and asking for more money from the school. It doesn't look good if you haven't done that for you to then be asking for more money. So do remember though, that in order to accept the loan, your student needs to log into their studentaid.com portal and do the loan insurance counseling. There's also a promissory note that has to be signed. And it's pretty easy. You can do it in 5 or 10 minutes, but they do have to log on and take care of those items before, excuse me, it's studentaid.gov, not .com. But you do need to take care of those things before the money can be dispersed. Let's see. Someone's asking, can you use the federal loans to pay for room and board or just tuition? And the federal loans can go towards, any aspect of the cost of attendance that's being billed by the school.
Yep. And I just put the links to some of the promissory note and entrance counseling into the chat. So if you're interested, you can click on them or copy and paste them so you have them.
Yep. All right. All right, so then something else that might pop up on your financial aid award letter from the school, in addition to your ability to take the federal student loan, is the federal parent plus loan. I think now they're just calling it the federal plus loan. This is whereas the student loan is only in the student's name, the parent loan is only in the parent's name. Um, there are there are have historically been some advantages to the Parent Plus loan in terms of there being some flexibility with forgiveness programs and things like that. That's kind of a changing situation, and I would say I wouldn't take the plus loan at this point for that reason alone, right? I would want to have some other reason to be taking the plus loan because it's kind of uncertain what's going to happen with that. But it's also not necessarily the most advantageous loan for a lot of people. Sometimes it is, and that's why you're going to end up getting quotes from a lot of different kinds of loans ultimately. But you see that the interest rate is almost 9% this year, quite a bit higher than the student loan. It has a 4.2% origination fee, which is kind of hefty, right, for an origination fee. But it is one of the easiest loans to qualify for. You fill out your information online and you'll find out right away whether you qualify for it, and it's totally based on credit. So it is a pretty easy loan to get. And in certain circumstances, it might be the cheapest loan for a parent to take out. So that's why you want to compare all your options.
Yeah, and I think we want to pause here and just for a minute because if you've heard of President Trump's one big beautiful bill, there's been some changes made here recently to this, and a couple things you should know as parents. So prior to the OBBA, you could borrow up to the full cost of attendance. So if it was $100,000 a year for 4 years, you could borrow 400,000 with very little likelihood of being declined. With the changes they're making in the OBBA, that's going to be limited to 60,000 a year. And it's going back to what we were talking about earlier, right? On return on investment, the ability to repay, all kinds of different things like that are being considered as they try and reduce the amount of student loan debt. But what's really important is anybody who takes a Parent Plus loan this school year, so the one that's about to start this month, you'll be grandfathered in and have the ability to borrow up to the higher amount. And if you wait a year, then you would be limited to $60,000. And if you have multiple students, that can be, an issue. I'm not 100% certain, Rynda. I don't know about you. If that 60,000 is limited by family or student, I need to look that up. I'm sorry, I don't know off the top of my head.
But
But they,
so it's going to be switching to 20,000 a year, maximum of 65,000 for all 4 years, and it's per student is my understanding.
okay. Thank you
So
for.
it's quite a bit of a change. But yeah, if you want to grandfather yourself into the unlimited, you would want to at least borrow a little bit this school year. Um, Again, it's still not our favorite place to go get money for school, but some families do use it. So
Yeah, I want to make sure that didn't come across as a recommendation. I just wanted you to be aware of the
yeah.
changes. All right.
All right.
Oh.
So oh, here we go. Here it is. It's a whole page just to the changes here. Um, eh, One thing to point out, if you as a parent end up taking the plus loan, but you agree with your child that they're really responsible for paying for it, that's between you and your kid. I mean, you know, the the education department doesn't care. They're still going to expect you to pay for it. So that would have to be just like a handshake agreement between you and your child if if the kid is supposed to be coming up with the money for it. Um, like I said, approval is or denial would be instantaneous. So this is a quick loan when in terms of finding out how, whether you qualify for it or not. And the rest of that we just talked about. So I think we can move on. Okay. Now, the next place that you will hopefully, if you need more than the federal direct student loan, hopefully you will be checking here with some state loans to see what options you have there to compare against your other options. And I think Chuck is putting some of these links for some of these state loans in the chat for you. Um, so your state, whether it's the state you live in or the state that your student is going to college, may have a state program. So, just Google, state of Kentucky student loan program or whatever, to find out about that. And you will definitely want to check and read about that program, get a quote, see what it offers, and if it meets your needs, if you need more money. There are 4 states now that will lend to any student in the country. And some of these are pretty decent programs as well. So I want you to definitely include this in your list of quotes that you're going to get to compare your options. Those 4 states are Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Iowa, and Kentucky. These, all of these loan programs you can apply for online. You'll get your response usually within a day or two. And these are a little more flexible than student loans and Parent Plus loans. I mean, the federal student loan or the Parent Plus loan in that sometimes it's either parent name or student name, or it could be cosigner situation. So you just have to read about what the options are for the individual state that you're applying at. Um, so yeah, we've particularly, I mean, just anecdotally had a lot of good feedback from Iowa this year for some reason. So don't forget to check with Iowa when you're getting quotes.
Yeah, and I did put Rhode Island and Massachusetts because that seems to be the most frequently used. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
Iowa's also a popular option.
Mm-hmm. Good deal.
All right.
Okay, so next option down the list would be looking at private student loans. Um, these loans are typically in the student's name with a cosigner, and definitely, I mean, 18-year-old kid, like I said, they don't have a credit history, so that's why they're all, unless it's an older student or something, they're going to need a cosigner to be able to take out a loan. There are so many options, right? And we'll go through, you're going to get a handout in an email, follow-up email, and we're going to look at it in a minute here on the screen as well that lists some of your options for private student loans. But the main thing is to look at what they're offering and compare that with what you need as a family. And I'll talk about that more in a second as well. But again, you're going to be, completing these applications online. Usually there's no origination fee, so that's helpful. But pay attention to the quotes that you're getting. Might look really low, but it could very well be a variable rate that they're quoting you first. So you want to look and see what their fixed rate is, especially if you're comparing it to fixed rates from like the Parent Plus loan or other loan providers. And because you have to be careful with variable rates. If the interest rate environment changes, you could really get tripped up with some pretty high payments if you take that variable rate on, especially if it's going to take you quite a while to pay off the student loan. Like a lot can happen over the course of the years that it takes you to pay off the student loans in terms of the interest rate changes. So let's see. I think from here, Chuck's going to take us over to that handout, and I will go through it with you guys for just a second so you can see. Um, this kind of gives you and where you see step-by-step guide to finding the best student loan. Step one, your federal direct loan. Step two, you're going to look at the actually we're hoping that you'll look with Ascent and College Ave because as far as private loans go, because they've been, giving us um, some good feedback we've gotten from some clients using them as well. And we have a personal, like a business relationship with Ascent, so they've got some good customer service for the CAP clients to help through that. And then step three would be checking with those state loans and your state if your state has a specific loan program. And then you compare everything with the Federal Plus loan and everything together. And like I said, you're looking at interest rates, but don't stop by just looking at the interest rates. Think about who's going to be paying for the loan, how long it's going to take to pay it off, how flexible do you need the payment terms to be? Um, and also think about, hopefully there's no prepayment penalties. You always want to just double check on that. Most of the time there isn't, but make sure. So, you want to make sure that all of your loan program is going to fit your ability to pay or your student's ability to pay and however you're dividing that up. Um, I'll go ahead and just point this out because right below here we are talk about our one-on-one meetings that you can have if you want to talk to me or Chuck or one of the other experts on our team. Until Friday at midnight, you can use the code LOAN20 as a discount code to get 20% off of a one-on-one consultation to meet with us and talk to us about your specific situation. And it doesn't have to be paying the bill. If you're wanting to talk about financial aid, appeals, paying the bill, any and financial aspect, and we also have team members that help with admissions as well. So feel free to go ahead and use that code. Even if you think you might need to set up an appointment in a future date, you can use the code to go ahead and pay for it and then schedule it later on. We've got some on-demand webinar. You can watch those. So, and this is the paying the bill toolkit is linked there for you. So, and it's basically what I just went over in terms of the steps. Here we have the links down below for Ascent. And if you want to call, go ahead and call the number to talk to someone about getting a quote from them for a loan. That would be a
Yeah.
great step you could take to get one option out of the way.
And these
One,
phone, yeah, just to make sure. So this phone number and the email is for specifically for College Aid Pro clients. You get a higher level of service. Sorry, Rynda, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to make sure that.
no worries. Thank you for pointing that out, Chuck.
Mhm.
And it's funny, my phone is ringing because my son is driving to college right now. So he was calling to talk to me. Okay. And
Go
then I
back.
think if you scroll down, there are some other, yes, these are some of the other companies, just to give you a point of comparison. And check with a handful because listen, these, depending on how each company kind of looks at your credit score, because a lot of this is just based on credit, you could really get different answers. For example, some of them will look only at the parent's credit score. Some of them do an average of the parent and the student's credit score. And let's face it, most students either have no credit or low credit because they just haven't had time to build it up. So depending on how they look at that, you could really get different quotes from different companies. So just make sure you check with a variety.
And just, to the point Rynda made earlier, these rates here, right? The lowest one is 3.4 or 3.39 at Abe. But if we go to RISLA, the Rhode Island state, you can see, it could be as low as 2.99. So it really does make sense to check all your options in advance.
Right. And that doesn't mean you want to just check with RISLA either, because
Yeah.
they might give you, that's their lowest rate. The rate they offer you might be much different too. So just keep
Yep.
that in mind. All right, let's go back to our presentation. Yep, we did that. Okay, so what about these other options for getting money for school? One that used to be really popular a few years ago was to take, use your home equity to borrow money, either cash out refinance, which is not the greatest option probably right now because most people have really low mortgage rates. And if you cash out and refinance right now, you're probably going to end up with a much higher mortgage rate. So right now, that's not looking great for a lot of people, but you could consider a home equity line of credit, which is kind of nice because you're not paying on interest on money you don't need yet. You can just take the money out as you need it, or potentially a home equity loan. Be careful with that one. If you take a loan and you get a cash lump sum and you sit it in your account, now it's an asset for you to report on your financial aid form if you haven't used it yet. So just be careful about the timing of that if you end up doing a home equity loan. And always, be careful anyway because you're putting your house on the line, right? There's a little bit more risk that, heaven forbid, if something were to go south with your financial life, that you could end up losing your home. Not that that's likely, but still, you want to always consider these decisions in the context of your whole financial life, not just, oh, I need to pay for college, right? Your whole life is important here. So, um, let's go to the next slide. We point this one out because, some 401ks do allow you to borrow from your account. Not if you want to consider this, you need to check with your company because not every 401k allows for it. Honestly, the only people that I feel like should really be looking into this are people who have saved too much for retirement. So if you feel like you have just gone, crazy saving every penny possible for retirement and you could never possibly need all that money for retirement, and you want to use some of it to help your kid pay for college, knock yourself out. But still remember, that there is risk with this because if for some reason you left your job and you had not paid off your loan, then it basically becomes a distribution from your 401k unless you can pay it off within a certain amount of time. And so then that has tax penalties associated with it. So just be careful with that. Um, Essentially what you're doing, you can borrow up to 50% of your vested balance and you pay yourself back through payroll deduction with interest. So, um,
Yeah, I'm going to throw two things in here. I work full time as a financial advisor, and I tell people all the time, you can borrow for college, but you can't borrow for retirement, right? And if it's to the point where you think you need to take out money from your 401k to pay for your kids' college, um, I would encourage you politely to determine if there's another less expensive school. And if there's not, I would simply ask your student, would you rather go to the more expensive school or would you, and that I live in your basement in 5 years or 10 years, or would you rather go to the less expensive school and not have your parents living in your basement? And oftentimes that will be the deciding factor on them choosing an alternative school. I know my daughter doesn't want me mingling around her basement in a couple years. So anyway, you can borrow for college, but you can't borrow for retirement. Always keep that in mind.
good words of wisdom. All right. And I'm just going to cover this quickly because we're almost at time here. But if you have a whole life insurance policy, it is possible that you have a cash value that you can borrow from. Always be careful with this, again, for the same reason. You have to make sure that you're not going to disrupt the life insurance policy and, you know, um, have it kind of fall apart and not be there for you for its intended purpose of life insurance, right? So you definitely would want to work with your financial advisor before you would take any steps towards using cash value in your life insurance policy. But if you have that in place and you want to, and it works out for your situation, that is another place that you could look towards getting some help, getting some money to pay for school. All right. So in order to decide how you specifically are going to pay for school, you want to ask yourself some questions. One is, how much does the rate of the loan matter? We all want the lowest rate, but maybe we have other things going on that other needs as well we need to pay attention to. So who's going to pay this loan back? How long, how long, over how
Period
long of a
payments. Yeah.
period are we going to need to pay it back? Um, that's going to be really important when you're comparing payoff options. How much do I value my consumer protection and flexibility? So do I need to pay a little bit more for a loan that has more flexible terms? That's something to consider. Am I willing to, pay a premium for having this insurance of that flexibility? You really want to be able to ask yourself that. And um, do I have equity in my house that I could safely borrow against and not be worried? Not that I'm taking on too much risk with my house. That's another thing you can ask yourself. And that will help you hopefully to put together a good plan. But if you're still not sure, you should definitely consider talking with one of us and signing up for a one-on-one consultation because we can certainly help talk you through and put together a good plan for your situation. Got anything you want to add, Chuck?
No,
Oh,
that's amazing.
we
There's
have one more screen. I forgot this was
yeah.
in. Yeah, and so this screen really is just in here to show you the difference between the Parent Plus loan and maybe some other private loan options. And this is specifically showing you if you were to take the Parent Plus loan at a 4.2% origination fee and 8.94% interest rate versus a no fee loan at 7%. And if you took 65,000 in each case, then the no fee 7% loan is going to save you $18,809 in interest over the life of the loan and $2,748 in fees. So it's quite a bit less expensive to go with that private loan in that scenario.
And we just got an interesting question that I've never had before. Um, has it become more common to use Bitcoin to pay for college? Um, so, as far as I know, there are only a handful of schools in America that accept Bitcoin or cryptocurrency as a means of payment. Um, I would encourage you as parents to maybe put that question into Chat GPT to see which colleges they are. I don't know off the top of my head, but I think potentially uh, Wharton School of Business at Pennsylvania has a specific class about blockchain that you can pay for. And then I think there's maybe a few that have introduced some options, maybe UC Berkeley and a couple other, but please don't quote me on that. It's very new. It's not super common, but it is out there.
Extra.
And with that, we hope you leave here feeling a little more empowered to make good decisions. We hope this was valuable. I'm happy to stay on for about one more minute to see if any last minute questions come in. I put the loan 20 coupon code in the chat with the link on how to use that. So if you have anything that you need help for, that's where you want to go. We hope to see you guys soon. And again, you can always choose Rynda or I, but any of our pros will be able to help you effectively answer your questions. And we appreciate you guys spending an hour with us this evening.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.